Morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is permission, giving ourselves permission to follow our hearts and pursue our dreams and our passions and our joy. So it should be fun conversation. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, and creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any tension, any remaining stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling, the tingling, and allow that sensation to bring you present right here, right now, in this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning. And good morning, Murad. Welcome, welcome. Good to have you here with us. I don't think we've had you join us before, so welcome. We're talking today about permission. And as far as permission goes, what we're talking about is giving ourselves permission to follow the callings of our hearts and our souls. And why this is coming up is because I've seen this happening with my clients and with myself in my life, where there was something that I felt so called to do, or that I wanted to speak, or that I wanted to pursue. Good morning, Bernadette. Welcome. So good to have you here with us. And I wouldn't give myself permission to follow my heart, because I thought I should be doing things a different way. You know, the general thinking, or the general wisdom, the general guidance really said, this is how you should be doing things. And even though it didn't feel right for me, for instance, I felt like I had an obligation to do things that way. So a really good example, and this came up in conversation with a client yesterday, a really good example is that there are so tried and true, I'm going to say tried and true methods for promoting yourself and building a practice and making a an identity for yourself online, you know, where you should be doing a certain number of Facebook posts and Twitter posts and Instagram posts, and you should be having a newsletter, and you should be having all these social outreach mechanisms happening. And the thing is, like, for me, this is pretty much the extent of my social media engagement, although I'm looking at getting more engaged around another project that I'm doing. But as far as my personal practice, you know, my coaching practice with people, I don't really have much of a social media presence, and that works fine for me. You know, like, I get to talk to you guys every day, which is a real gift and blessing, and I love that. And so this is the thing. I love that. I love this, connecting with you. I love our conversations. And so that feels like a really natural fit for me. Whereas the other stuff in, engaging on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, for the most part, doesn't really feel comfortable for me. It's not a place at this moment anyway, and that may change, but in this moment, it's not a natural fit for me. And so to be able to honor my own sense of self, the other thing is that, when we're building a practice, a lot of people feel like they need to appeal to everybody, when in fact, your practice is not designed for everybody, for example. So like with my work is really not for everybody. My work is for people who have been doing transformational work, that have been really committed to a transformational path. People like my work is for people who are the teachers, the healers, the world changers, people that are having broader outreach, people who have a big vision, and so when I'm sharing this because I've shared it with a couple of clients and it really made a big difference for them. When I honored who my clients really are and who the people are that I work that I gel most effectively with, when I took ownership of that and recognized that, my flavor of work is not for everybody. And when I really gave myself permission to honor myself and my work, and my audience, then everything changed. The ability that I had to better articulate, things for my website, the communications that I had could be a whole lot more authentic, because I was coming from my heart, and therefore it flowed instead of trying to fit myself into somebody else's mold, which I think is something that we very frequently do. And we get to give ourselves permission to be ourselves. So Bernadette says, I believe when one has a calling, it needs to only be done the way you feel, not what the masses want you to do. Exactly. Just like my interviews with adopted people, been told to do it so many different ways, and I choose what I feel, LOL. Well, good for you, Bernadette. I'm not aware of your interviews with adopted people, but it sounds like a really cool series. Because I'm sure you get the opportunity to unearth all kinds of dynamics that a lot of people don't talk about. Thank you. Bernadette says, I love your personalization you shared. Thank you so much. So what I've learned, and this is something that I think is important for everybody, is that my life goes a whole lot better when I am authentically myself. And so what you see is what you get, baby. Like that's what's happening here. Is this is me. And I'm sure I'm not the preferred flavor for some people, and that's okay. We do not, when we try to appeal to everyone, when we try to please everyone, we become not our authentic selves. So Bernadette says, been a while, but it's what is your real name? So that's the name of the series that you did on interviewing adopted people. That's awesome. Is that something, Bernadette, that if we did a search online, we would be able to find? What is your real name? I'm going to check it out afterwards. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure it was awesome work that you did. So when we give ourselves permission to be who we are, to follow our passion, it's a really super powerful thing. So Bernadette says, new one coming down the pipe with a different name that I've chosen. That's exciting, Bernadette. I'm looking forward to checking it out. And congratulations on the new one coming down the pipe. That's awesome. So it's, as I'm thinking about this topic, I had this conversation with 3 different clients this week, independently of each other, where it's like, no, 4 different clients this week is like, this is what I really love, but it's frivolous, or this is what I really love, but I could never make money doing that, or this is what I really love, but I understand I'm supposed to be doing it a different way, or this is what I really love, but I didn't want to, I was afraid I would limit my audience. And it's so interesting. It's interesting that we add this, yeah, but to when we finally do identify a joy or a passion, because first of all, so many people, and another client who is kind of like, I've been doing stuff for other people my whole life to such an extent that I don't even know what I want. I don't even know what would light me up, because I've just been so focused on taking care of others. So then there's the opportunity to be exploring what are those desires. So Bernadette says, thanks. We all need to do what fits us independently. Exactly. And the thing is, it takes courage. So the other side of this is permission to shine our light. It's essentially the same thing, but people being afraid to be visible, to be showing who they are, because there are maybe genetic or energetic memories of, or even real life fears of being persecuted for being who you are. So for instance, it wasn't that long ago where healer people, when they allowed themselves to be seen, might be perceived as witches, for instance. People who were able to support others in healing and transformation would be persecuted as being witches and tortured and killed. And so there's this maybe energetic memory around that kind of persecution that also has people hiding. It's interesting, we say we live in a free society, and yet there's all kinds of social pressure, real or perceived. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's real, because I think it is true, though, that that people who are trailblazing, people who step out of the lockstep of conventional culture, often do experience the active rejection, or not, and maybe even beyond rejection, active hostility from others. And the thing is, they say all publicity is good publicity. So it's like, okay, well, if there are people who really have a visceral reaction against me or you, then it just means that you are a distinctive flavor, right? And not everybody likes every flavor. There are people for, for every different manifestation. So Bernadette says, aren't we in persecution when we listen to others that go against our passions? Well, I think so. I that's a really good point, Bernadette. I think what happens is that we end up persecuting ourselves. We end up abdicating our own rights. And as we do that, as we give up our right to be, like to legitimately be who we are, then what are we doing? When we're choosing to hide, it's such a paradoxical form of self-preservation. I'm gonna preserve myself by disappearing. I'm gonna preserve myself by not being myself. And that's another form of insanity, isn't it? When there's something very wrong with that equation. And so when we give ourselves permission to truly follow our passions, it's interesting. So one client who may be listening had said, yeah, I have this particular love, and but I've not pursued it because I couldn't imagine how I could make money at that. And my response was, well, wait a second. There are people who make a living figure skating or dancing or singing or modeling or, like doing all these crazy things. People make a living doing that. Why would you not be able to make a living doing what you love? It's just a matter of recognizing the value. And when you recognize the value and your intrinsic value, this is the other piece. When you recognize your intrinsic value also and your worthiness to be able to receive the compensation for whatever that skill or passion is of yours, then things shift. I mean, there are many artists who have lived and died in squalor, unfortunately, and then become famous after, post-mortem. But there are also artists who are very successful. And part of it has to do with our self-perception and the equations that we set up internally. So I have another client who has it's waning, fortunately, through the work that we've done, but who had an equation that in order to be responsible, you have to worry. So I have another friend who had an equation of if I'm an artist, I have to struggle. So we put these equations together, and then we live within the limitations that we have designed for ourselves. It's kind of crazy the way that we equate certain elements of suffering to the things that we desire. Why couldn't we be excited if we're in order to be responsible, we get to be engaged. Why is it worry, for instance? It's just, and these equations are typically out of our awareness. Like, we don't even notice that we have this this equation set up that is causing us all kinds of suffering and pain, and also probably causing suffering and pain for those around us as well. So Rosalind says, we grew up as kids hearing not to be safe. So permission might not feel like a total yes because it doesn't feel safe, maybe because forging a new path is new territory. So exactly, Rosalind, I think we have all kinds of equations about safety that are really messed up. You know, like we grow up being afraid, being taught, don't talk to strangers. And I get that. I understand why you don't want kids to talk to strangers, because there's stranger danger kind of thing, right? Like there are really bad actors who would take advantage of children and spirit them away. I know that this happens. I'm not denying that. And we grow up with this idea that others are the enemy. And I think that there are other ways to approach that whole dynamic. And I'm not going to be so presumptuous as to say that I know what those ways are, because I don't. I do know that that's a paradigm we get to change, you know, this othering of people. And at the same time, I think there are greater distinctions that we can make. You know, we all have these gut feelings. I think children have them too. And I think we can get children to cultivate those feelings as we learn to cultivate those awarenesses as adults, the gut feeling. I had a client this week say, you know, I have gut feelings, and every time I trust those gut feelings, I'm right. And when I don't trust those gut feelings, I pay the price for it. And this is the case for all of us, I think. You know, that we get to give ourselves permission to trust our knowing. You know, that's another thing I talk about with clients is be willing to know what you know. Be willing to give yourself permission, even though sometimes we have this really strong feeling about things and we override it. And there are all kinds of reasons that we can override things. One of the reasons we might override something is because we really want it to be different. We really want something to work, so we override our gut feeling like, nope, this isn't the thing, you know, because we really want it to be the case. And so we override it. And when that happens, we get big ouchies as a result, you know, like I've had enough of those. I've had enough of those comeuppances or consequences for not paying attention to my gut, because I could, you know, looking on the surface, it's like, oh, this is such a good, you know, a good opportunity, or this is such a good fit. But my gut's saying, maybe not. And then I'll go and I'll say, yeah, but there's this reason and that reason and the other reason. And I'll convince myself, or have in the past convinced myself that what I was doing was a good thing for me or would work out well. And then when it comes back to bite me in the butt, you know, there could be all kinds of disappointment and upset around it, right? Because it didn't turn out. But the thing is, I knew up front, and I just overrode that and moved ahead because I really wanted it to be different, you know? So sometimes it takes a deliberate turn of the head to pay attention to the signs, you know, like I had a person show up in my life that I was very intrigued by, and it looked like we might be able to partner in a venture. And I was very excited about that prospect because I really wanted somebody to be able to work with. And then I was getting all these signals like this person's not reliable. As much as you like who they are, as much as you're curious about what they're up to, as much as it might be that they could be a huge contribution, they're just not showing up in a way that feels in any way comfortable or reliable. And part of me just kept wanting this affiliation, even though I had all the signs. And fortunately, at this point in my life, I've gone through enough of those kinds of situations to say, whatever the goodness is, it ain't for this affiliation. You know, it's not, this is not somebody to partner with, at least not at this time. And that was a hard decision. It was a hard revelation to come to because I really wanted it to be different. And in the past, I've allowed my really wanting to overcome my really knowing. And so giving myself permission to honor my knowing, that's a big deal too. Rosalind says, how about when goals are floating around in the mind? How does one discern those thought forms as true? Do we sit and use feeling into it? So I love the question, Rosalind. And when we talk about goals, I encourage people not to have goals. I encourage people, and I'm not saying this is right, it's just another vantage point. I encourage people to have intentions. And along with that, I encourage people not to be engaged in doing, you know, like I've got all these tasks, I've got a checklist, I got to do all those things. I encourage people to be moving from inspired action, you know, to be connecting with inspiration. So if you have visions are different from goals. You know, like I have a vision of this eco park, and I have intentions of like, what's the foundational intention of the eco park? Long term, it's to save the planet for our future, our continued existence on it, in harmony with nature. You know, so the eco park is a vehicle of education and information and inspiration transformation. It may be that the eco park eventually dissolves, you know, because it's not a goal, it's an intention. And the underlying intention is what's driving the manifestation. So I think we get to look at goals, you know, like, is that coming from a place of connected inspiration, whatever that outcome is that you're looking for, you know. So my objective is not the eco park for example, at all costs. My intention is to be forwarding a harmony with nature and with life and our planet and each other and ourselves. You know, inner harmony then breeds outer harmony. At least that's my perspective on it at the moment. Again, working hypotheses. So I think the feeling element, that's the drive, that's the life force, that's the thing that gives us impulse, gives us energy to move into something. And you know, we can cultivate that place of inspiration by connecting and giving ourselves space to connect with that underlying intention. And then action can move from that space. I think it's worth trying, right? And the feeling awareness, the gut response, that's really, in so many ways, it's a much more in-tuned intelligence, you know, the beyond rational, in big air quotes, the beyond rational awareness of things, because we can rationalize almost anything. You know, we can justify and make excuses and you know, justify. You know, and we're really good at justifying our reasoning for things, I think. And oftentimes that's just not in alignment with who we are. You know, like that's where a lot of the shoulds come in. You know, I'm being conditioned to believe this is how I should proceed. This is how I should build this business. This is how it should happen. Maybe not. Maybe there are better ways, at least for you. So anyway, giving ourselves permission to shine, giving ourselves permission to shine our light, to follow our heart, to engage in our passions. All of these things are really important. And the thing is that a lot of times we equate our joy or what we get to do is we get to look at these equations that we have that are kind of running us on other than conscious levels. You know, it's like, well, that's something I love. There's no way I could make money at that. You know, like there's this separation, and those often other than conscious equations are things that are creating a lot of suffering for us. So we get to start decoding some of those crazy knots that we make for ourselves. Anyway, that's it for this morning. I so appreciate you and your engagement in these conversations, really, really. And this is a source of inspiration and joy for me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And until next time, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I encourage you to check out all the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living. And good morning, Dido. Thank you so much for being here with us. And until next time, so much love to you.